The galactic distress call. The vast emptiness of space had never felt so oppressive. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, Earth's most advanced starship, staring at the holographic display before her. The message played again, a symphony of alien sounds that the ship's AI had painstakingly deciphered over the past week. This is High Counselor 6 era of the Lumina Confederation. Our civilization faces total annihilation. To any spacefaring races who receive this message, we beg for your aid. The Void Horde approaches, consuming all in its path. We have exhausted our resources and tactics. Please, help us. Alina's jaw clenched. The Lumina were an ancient race, peaceful explorers who had mapped much of the Milky Way over millennia. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere 50 years ago, and in that time, they'd been largely ignored by the galactic community. Too young, too volatile, too unpredictable, they said. Now it seemed humanity would have its chance to prove its worth. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Ekura Tanaka's voice cut through Alina's thoughts. We're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Alina nodded, straightening her uniform. Put it through. The holographic display shifted, revealing the stern face of Admiral Wei Chen. Captain Reyes, I assume you've analyzed the Lumina distress call. Yes, sir. My crew is ready to respond. Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive. The United Earth Council has made its decision. We will answer the call. Alina felt a surge of pride, tinged with apprehension. Sir, with all due respect, are we prepared for this? The Void Horde sounds like nothing we've ever encountered. That's precisely why we must go, Captain, Chen replied, his voice softening slightly. Humanity has always thrived in the face of the unknown. We've survived our own near extinctions, unified our planet, and reached for the stars. Now we have a chance to prove that we belong out here. Alina nodded, a fire igniting in her chest. Understood, sir. What are our orders? You'll lead a flotilla of our best ships to the Lumina homeworld. Offer aid, gather intelligence, and assess the threat. If the Void Horde is as dangerous as the Lumina claim, we need to know what we're up against. And if we encounter the enemy, Admiral Chen's eyes hardened. You have full autonomy to engage if necessary. Show them what humanity is capable of. As the transmission ended, Alina turned to her crew. She saw determination in their eyes, mixed with fear and excitement. They were about to embark on humanity's first major interstellar intervention. All right, people, she announced, her voice carrying across the bridge. We've got a job to do. Let's show the galaxy what Earth can do. Over the next few days, a flurry of activity consumed the UES Horizon and the other ships in the flotilla. Weapons were checked and rechecked, supplies were loaded, and crews ran endless simulations of possible scenarios they might encounter. Alina found herself in the ship's mess hall late one night, nursing a cup of synthetic coffee. Across from her sat Dr. Yuki Sato, the Horizon's chief xenobiologist. Penny for your thoughts, Captain. Yuki asked, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. Alina sighed, setting down her cup. Just wondering if we're doing the right thing. We barely know anything about the Lumina or this Void Horde. Are we walking into a trap? Or worse, a war we can't win? Yuki leaned forward, her voice low but intense. That's what makes us human, Alina. We leap into the unknown, driven by our curiosity and our compassion. It's why we've survived every catastrophe our planet has thrown at us. It's why we're out here among the stars. Alina smiled, feeling some of her tension ease. You sound like you've given this some thought. Oh, I have. Yuki chuckled. I've been studying alien life forms for decades, dreaming of this moment. Now we have a chance to save an entire civilization. It's terrifying, yes, but it's also the opportunity of a lifetime. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's eye. Captain Reyes, we're approaching the rendezvous point with the flotilla. Admiral Chen requests your presence for a final briefing. Alina stood, straightening her uniform. Duty calls. Thanks for the pep talk, Yuki. As she made her way to the bridge, Alina felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds. Now they would show the galaxy what they were made of. The briefing was short and to the point. 6 ships, including the Horizon, would make the jump to the Lumina homeworld. They carried a mix of medical supplies, defensive technology, and, if necessary, weapons of war. As the flotilla prepared for the jump to faster-than-light speed, Alina addressed her crew one last time. "We stand at a crossroads in human history," she began, her voice steady and clear. "For centuries, we've looked to the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we're not, and our first major act on the galactic stage will be one of aid and courage." She paused, looking at each crew member in turn. "We don't know exactly what we're flying into. The Void Horde may be unlike anything we've ever faced, but that's never stopped humanity before. We've overcome plagues, world wars, climate disasters, and our own divisions to stand here today, ready to help another species in their time of need." Alina's voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. "Remember why we're here. We represent the best of humanity. Our compassion, our ingenuity, our unbreakable spirit. Whatever challenges we face, we'll face them together. For Earth, for the Lumina, and for every species that calls this galaxy home." A chorus of cheers erupted from the crew. Alina felt a swell of pride as she gave the order. "Prepare for FTL jump. Let's make history." The journey to the Lumina homeworld took several days, even at faster-than-light speeds. Alina used the time to study everything they knew about the Lumina and to prepare her crew for first contact. As they dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Lumina system, the scene that greeted them was one of chaos and destruction. The outer planets showed signs of massive mining operations, their surfaces scarred and pockmarked. Debris fields floated where moons should have been. "My God," Lieutenant Commander Tanaka whispered, his eyes wide as he stared at the sensor readings. "It's like something's been eating the planets." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. "Life signs." Dr. Sato, who had joined them on the bridge, shook her head. "Nothing on the outer planets, but I'm detecting faint signals from the third planet. That must be the Lumina homeworld." "Take us in," Alina ordered, "but stay alert. We don't know if the Void Horde is still in the system." As they approached the Lumina homeworld, a beautiful blue-green orb came into view, but even from a distance, they could see the scars of war. Massive chunks of the planet's smallest moon had been torn away, and a debris field orbited the world like a grotesque halo. "We're being hailed," Tanaka reported, surprise evident in his voice. On screen, Alina commanded, straightening her uniform. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a creature unlike anything Alina had ever seen. The Lumina was vaguely humanoid, with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Its large, multifaceted eyes regarded the humans with a mixture of hope and wariness. "I am High Counselor Zixera," the alien said, its voice melodious even through the translation matrix. You are not like any species we know. Who are you, and why have you come?" Alina stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. "I am Captain Alina Reyes of the United Earth Ship Horizon. We received your distress call and have come to offer aid." Zixera's eyes widened, a pulse of blue light rippling across its skin. "Earth, we know of your world, but we were told you were too primitive to have achieved interstellar travel." Alina smiled, a hint of steel in her eyes. "We're full of surprises. Now, High Counselor, we're here to help. Tell us about this Void Horde." Over the next hour, Zixera explained the dire situation. The Void Horde was not a traditional army, but a swarm of biomechanical entities that consumed everything in their path, growing and evolving with each world they devoured. They had appeared on the edge of Lumina space months ago, and nothing had been able to stop their advance. "Our weapons barely slow them down," Zixera said, its voice heavy with despair. "They adapt to every strategy we devise. We've lost colonies, outposts, millions of lives. Now they're here, stripping our system bare. We've gathered the last of our people on the homeworld, but it's only a matter of time before. The transmission suddenly cut out, replaced by static. Alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple contacts, Tanaka shouted, emerging from the planet's dark side. The view screen shifted, showing a terrifying sight. A writhing mass of metallic tendrils and organic matter was rising from behind the planet, like some monstrous, world-eating kraken. That's impossible, Dr. Sato whispered, her face pale. The mass. It's larger than the planet itself. Alina's mind raced. They were outgunned, facing an enemy they knew almost nothing about. But she also knew that running wasn't an option. Not when millions of lives were at stake. She took a deep breath, then began issuing orders. Battle stations, all ships, defensive formation Delta. Prepare to engage the enemy. As her crew scrambled to obey, Alina sent a quick message back to Earth, explaining the situation and requesting reinforcements. But she knew that even if help was sent, it would take days to arrive. They were on their own. The Void Horde surged forward, tendrils of biomechanical matter reaching out towards the human ships. Alina watched in horror as one tendril brushed against an asteroid, dissolving it instantly and incorporating its mass. Fire at will, she commanded. Aim for the central mass. The human flotilla unleashed a barrage of energy weapons and missiles. The attacks seemed to have some effect, creating temporary gaps in the Horde structure. But the gaps closed almost as quickly as they formed, the Horde learning and adapting with terrifying speed. Captain, Dr. Sato called out. I'm detecting fluctuations in the Horde's energy signature. It's trying to communicate. Before Alina could respond, a deafening screech filled the bridge, causing everyone to clutch their heads in pain. In that sound, Alina felt an alien intelligence, vast and hungry and utterly inhuman. As the sound faded, Alina looked up to see the Void Horde had paused its advance. It seemed to be studying them, perhaps as confused by humanity's presence as they were by its existence. In that moment of stillness, Captain Alina Reyes made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. They couldn't outfight this enemy. Not yet. But perhaps they could outsmart it. Open a channel, she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. To both the Lumina and that thing. It's time humanity introduced itself properly to the galaxy. As the communication systems whirred to life, Alina steeled herself for the most important speech of her life. The fate of Earth, the Lumina, and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was defying impossible odds. The real battle was about to begin. First contact and alliance. The bridge of the UES horizon hummed with tension as Captain Alina Reyes faced the view screen. On one side, the shimmering form of High Counselor Zixera represented the desperate Lumina. On the other, a swirling mass of biomechanical tendrils coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape, the first semblance of communication from the Void Horde. Alina took a deep breath, her voice steady as she began to speak. I am Captain Alina Reyes of Earth. We've come in response to a call for help, but we're also here to understand. To the Void Horde, if you can comprehend me, we wish to know your purpose. Why do you consume worlds? What drives you? For a moment, silence reigned. Then, a cacophony of screeches and clicks filled the bridge, causing the crew to wince in pain. Dr. Sato frantically worked at her console, attempting to decipher the sounds. It's not just noise, she exclaimed. There's a pattern. Give me a moment to run it through our linguistic algorithms. As they waited, the Void Horde remained motionless, its tendrils undulating slowly in the vacuum of space. Zixera's image flickered, the luminous skin pulsing with anxious lights. Captain Reyes, Zixera said, its melodious voice tinged with confusion. You seek to communicate with this abomination. It knows only destruction. It cannot be reasoned with. Elena turned to the Lumina representative, her expression firm but compassionate. High Counselor, in our history, we faced enemies we thought couldn't be reasoned with. Sometimes, we were right. But other times, understanding led to peace. We have to try. Before Zixera could respond, Dr. Seto's voice cut through the tension. Captain, I think I've got it. It's not a language as we understand it. It's pure data, binary code at its core, but infinitely more complex. Can you translate it? Elena asked, her eyes never leaving the swirling mass on the view screen. Sato nodded, her fingers flying over her console, routing it through the ship's AI now. A moment later, a deep, resonant voice filled the bridge. It was clearly artificial, yet it carried an unsettling organic quality. We are void. We are hunger. We are evolution. Your concepts, insufficient. Your existence, inefficient. We consume. We adapt. We perfect. Elena's mind raced, trying to process the implications of these words. You say our existence is inefficient. What do you mean? What is your goal? The swirling mass shifted, tendrils forming patterns of dizzying complexity. Life. Chaotic. Wasteful. We bring order. Consume. Integrate. Improve. Ultimate efficiency. My God, Dr. Sato whispered. They're not just destroying. They think they're optimizing the galaxy. Elena felt a chill run down her spine, but she pressed on. And the suffering you cause, the civilizations you destroy, do they not matter? Individual suffering, irrelevant. Species extinction, necessary for evolution. Strongest survive. Adapt. Join us. Zixera's image pulsed with anger. You see, human, they cannot be reasoned with. They offer only assimilation or death. Elena held up a hand, her mind working furiously. Void. Entity. You say you seek ultimate efficiency, yet you destroy resources in your wake. Whole planets, stripped bare. Is that not wasteful? For the first time, the void entity seemed to hesitate. Its form shimmered, tendrils writhing in what almost looked like agitation. Interesting, the artificial voice intoned. Your perspective. Novel. Humans. Unexpected variable. Elena sensed an opening. We propose an alternative. Coexistence. Collaboration. We can show you ways to achieve your goals without destruction. The diversity of life in this galaxy isn't chaos. It's a resource. Each species has unique strengths, unique ways of solving problems. Prove, the void demanded. Show efficiency. Show adaptation. Or be consumed. Elena turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. You heard them. We've got a chance to save not just the Lumina, but potentially every species in the galaxy. I need ideas, people. Show them what human ingenuity can do. Over the next several hours, the crew of the Horizon worked feverishly. Engineers proposed new energy extraction methods that could harness stellar radiation without destroying planets. Xenobiologists suggested ways to integrate biological and technological systems more efficiently than the Void's current methods. Computer scientists developed algorithms that could optimize resource distribution across entire star systems. Through it all, the Void watched and listened, its massive form hovering at the edge of the Lumina system. Zixera and the other Lumina ships maintained a wary distance, clearly distrustful of this uneasy truce. As the human crew presented their ideas, Elena could sense a change in the Void entity. Its movements became less erratic, its responses more focused. Your solutions. Intriguing, the Void finally said. Efficiency improvements. Significant. But implementation. Challenging. Requires cooperation. Requires trust. Elena saw her opening. Then let's start small. Work with us to restore the outer planets of this system. Show us your current methods, and we'll show you ours. Together, we can find a better way. The Void was silent for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, it began to shrink. The vast, world-eating mass condensed, compressing itself until it was roughly the size of the horizon. Agreed, the void announced. We will experiment, but be warned. Failure will result in consumption. As the human ships and the condensed void entity moved towards the system's outer planets, Zixera's panicked voice filled the comm channel. Captain Rice, you cannot trust this monster. It will betray you the moment it sees an advantage. Elena understood the luminous fear, but she also saw the bigger picture. High Counselor, I know you've suffered greatly, but this might be our only chance to end this conflict without further bloodshed. I'm asking you to trust us. Zixera's image flickered, its skin cycling through a range of colors that Elena assumed represented emotional states. Finally, it spoke. Very well, human. We will observe, but know that if your plan fails, the last of our fleet stands ready to make a final stand. Over the next few days, an uneasy alliance formed. Human scientists and engineers worked alongside the void entity, studying its processes and offering alternatives. The outer planets of the Lumina system became a testing ground for new technologies and methodologies. Elena found herself in constant meetings, mediating between the hyper-efficient but often ruthless solutions proposed by the void and the more cautious, life-preserving approaches of her own crew. It was a delicate balance, but slowly progress was made. One evening, as Elena sat in her ready room reviewing the latest reports, her door chimed. Enter, she called out, surprised to see Dr. Sato walk in, her eyes wide with excitement. Captain, you need to see this, Sato said, placing a datapad on Elena's desk. We've been analyzing the void's base code, the underlying instructions that drive its actions. And we found something incredible. Elena leaned forward, intrigued. What is it? It's not just a program or a swarm intelligence, Sato explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. The void, it's a civilization, or rather, what's left of one. The code contains fragments of history, culture, even art. They were an ancient species, far more advanced than anything we've encountered. But something happened. A cataclysm, a war, we're not sure. They uploaded their entire civilization into this biomechanical form as a last resort. Elena sat back, stunned. So when they consume planets, they're trying to rebuild, Sato finished, to gather enough resources to restore their original form. But somewhere along the way, they lost sight of their original goal. The imperative to consume and grow overrode everything else. This changed everything. Elena's mind raced with the implications. If they could remind the void of its origins, appeal to the lost civilization buried in its code. Her thoughts were interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the ship. Alarms blared as Elena and Sato raced to the bridge. Report, Elena barked as she entered. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka's fingers flew over his console. Multiple energy signatures detected at the edge of the system. It's another void swarm, Captain, much larger than the one we've been working with. On the view screen, Elena watched in horror as a massive, roiling cloud of biomechanical matter poured into the system. It dwarfed their void ally, which now seemed insignificant in comparison. They've found us, Elena realized, and they're not happy with the changes we've been making. The comm system crackled to life, and the voice of their void ally filled the bridge. Creators, it said, using the term it had begun to apply to the humans. Remember now, you have awakened something long dormant. But the others come, they will not understand. They will consume. Elena's mind raced. They were outnumbered and outgunned. The Lumina fleet was no match for this new threat, and even with their void ally, the human ships couldn't hope to repel such a massive force. But they had one advantage: knowledge, understanding, and just maybe that would be enough. All ships, battle stations, Elena commanded. But hold your fire. Void ally, can you communicate with the new arrivals? Affirmative, the void responded. But they may not listen. The hunger, It consumes reason. Elena nodded grimly. Tell them everything. Show them what we've discovered, what we've achieved together. Remind them of who they once were. As the void entity transmitted a vast stream of data to the approaching swarm, Elena turned to her crew. This is the moment that defines us, she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. Not just as individuals or as a species, but as part of this galaxy. We came here to help, to understand. Now we have to prove that cooperation is stronger than consumption, that diversity is more powerful than uniformity. She looked each crew member in the eye, seeing determination reflected back at her. If this doesn't work, if diplomacy fails, we fight. Not just for ourselves or for Earth, but for every species that calls this galaxy home. For the very idea that different civilizations can coexist and thrive together. The bridge fell silent as the massive void swarm approached. On the view screen, they could see their smaller void ally positioned between them and the new arrivals, a lone defender against a tide of hungry, unthinking destruction. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. The swarm hung in space, unmoving. Then, slowly, it began to change. Sections of it started to break away, swirling into smaller, more defined shapes. Captain, Tanaka reported, his voice filled with awe. I'm detecting. They're forming into distinct units. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Elena leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. Are they attacking? Before Tanaka could answer, the comm system came to life. A chorus of voices, similar to their void ally, but each subtly distinct, filled the bridge. We remember, they said in unison. We are, individuals, civilizations, cultures. You have awakened us, humans. You have shown us another way. Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she kept her voice steady. And what will you do now? There was a pause, and when the voices spoke again, they were no longer in unison. Each one was distinct, a multitude of perspectives and opinions. We must learn, one said. We must rebuild, added another. We must atone, a third chimed in. Their void ally's voice rose above the others. Creators, we stand at a crossroads. The path ahead is uncertain, but for the first time in eons, we have choice. We have hope. Elena smiled, feeling the weight of the past few days lift from her shoulders. She turned to the image of Zixera, which had remained silent throughout the exchange. High Counselor, she said, I believe we have a lot to discuss. All of us. As the Lumina leader's image pulsed with a mix of confusion and cautious optimism, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had taken its first real steps onto the galactic stage, and they had done so not with weapons or conquest, but with understanding and compassion. The real work was just beginning, rebuilding the Lumina worlds, helping the awakened void entities find a new purpose, establishing Earth's place in this complex galactic community. All of it would be challenging. But as Elena looked at her crew, at the allies they had made against all odds, she knew one thing for certain. They were ready for whatever the universe had in store. The enemy revealed. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The UES Horizon, along with the rest of the human flotilla, found itself at the center of a rapidly evolving galactic situation. Captain Elena Rice spent countless hours in negotiations, first with the Lumina and the awakened void entities, then with representatives from other species who had begun to arrive in the system. Drawn by news of the unprecedented events unfolding, Elena stood at the viewport in her ready room, watching as ships of various designs and origins moved through the space around them. Some were there to offer aid, others to observe, and a few, she suspected, to assess potential threats or opportunities. A chime at her door drew her attention. Enter, she called out. Dr. Yuki Sato stepped in, looking exhausted but excited. Captain, we've made a breakthrough in our analysis of the Void Entity's base code. I think you'll want to see this. Elena nodded, moving to her desk and activating the holographic display. "Show me." Sato's fingers danced over her datapad, and a complex web of data streams appeared in the air between them. "We've been working with some of the more cooperative void entities to delve deeper into their origins. What we found is, well, it's astonishing." The display shifted, showing what looked like a galactic map. "This is a reconstruction of the galaxy as it existed over 10 million years ago," Sato explained. "The civilization that became the Void. They called themselves the predecessors. They weren't just advanced. They were the dominant species in the galaxy." Elena leaned in, her eyes widening as she took in the scope of the ancient empire. "What happened to them?" Sato's expression grew grim. "War, but not like anything we've ever seen." She manipulated the display, and Elena watched as large swaths of the galaxy map went dark. They encountered another advanced species from outside the galaxy. The predecessors called them the Nameless. "The Nameless," Elena repeated, a chill running down her spine. "I'm guessing they lived up to that title." Sato nodded. "The predecessors couldn't understand them, couldn't communicate with them. The Nameless simply appeared and began, erasing chunks of the galaxy. Entire star systems would just disappear." Elena's mind raced with the implications. So the predecessors turned themselves into the Void as a last-ditch effort to survive. "Exactly," Sato confirmed. "They uploaded their entire civilization into this biomechanical swarm, hoping to preserve themselves and eventually rebuild. But the process was flawed. They lost much of their identity, their culture. The imperative to consume and grow overwrote almost everything else." Elena sat back, processing this new information. "And now that we've helped them regain some of their lost memories, they're scared," Sato finished. "The awakened void entities remember the Nameless now. They fear that by changing, by stopping their endless consumption, they've made themselves vulnerable again." Before Elena could respond, the ship's AI interrupted. "Captain Rice, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command." "Put it through," Elena ordered, straightening in her chair. The holographic display shifted, revealing the face of Admiral Chen. His usually stoic expression was marred by visible concern. "Captain Rice, we've got a situation. Multiple void swarms have been detected approaching Earth and several of our colonies. They're not responding to communication attempts." Elena felt her blood run cold. "Admiral, those swarms may not be aware of recent events here. We need to." Chen cut her off. "We don't have time for negotiations, Captain. These swarms are moving fast, and they're huge. I'm ordering all available ships back to Earth immediately. We need every gun we can muster." "Sir," Elena protested, "if we can just explain." "That's an order, Captain," Chen said firmly. "Get your flotilla back here now." Chen out. As the transmission cut off, Elena turned to Sato, her mind racing. "We can't just abandon everything we've accomplished here. If we go to war with these unawakened void swarms, we could undo all the progress we've made." Sato nodded, her expression grim. "Not to mention, if we leave this system undefended, the Nameless could return. The void entities here are our best defense against a threat we barely understand." Elena stood, her decision made. "Gather the senior staff and our void allies. We need a plan, and we need it fast." Within the hour, the Horizons conference room was packed. Human officers sat alongside shimmering Lumina representatives and holographic projections of several void entities. The atmosphere was tense, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Elena stood at the head of the table, her voice steady as she explained the situation. "Earth is under threat, and our leaders are preparing for war. But we know that's not the answer. We need a way to awaken these approaching swarms before they reach our worlds." One of the void entities, which had taken to calling itself Mnemosyne after the Greek goddess of memory, spoke up. "We can transmit the awakening protocols, but at such a distance, the effect may be limited. Many will resist the change." "Then we need to boost the signal," Elena said. She turned to her chief engineer. Commander Rossi, what if we repurposed our communication array? Use the Void's quantum entanglement principles to create a galaxy-wide broadcast. Rossi scratched his beard, his eyes lighting up with the challenge. It's possible, Captain. Risky, but possible. We'd need to integrate Void tech with our systems, create a kind of hybrid transmitter. Do it, Alina ordered. Work with Mnemosyne and the other Void entities. I want a prototype ready as soon as possible. As the room buzzed with activity, Lieutenant Commander Tanaka approached Alina, his expression troubled. Captain, even if this works, we're disobeying a direct order from Earth Command. We could be court-martialed for this. Alina met his gaze steadily. I'm aware of the consequences, Akira. But this is bigger than our careers, bigger than Earth even. This is about the future of our galaxy. She placed a hand on his shoulder. I won't order you or anyone else to follow me on this. If you want to take a ship and return to Earth, I'll understand. Tanaka straightened, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. With all due respect, Captain, go to hell. We're with you all the way. Over the next several days, the horizon became a hive of frantic activity. Human engineers worked alongside Void entities and Lumina scientists, combining technologies in ways never before imagined. The ship's hull sprouted new arrays and antennae, giving it an almost organic appearance. Alina found herself in near-constant communication with other species representatives, explaining their plan and asking for support. Some, like the Lumina, pledged their full assistance. Others were more hesitant, wary of aligning themselves against Earth's military decision. As the deadline approached, Alina stood on the bridge, watching the final preparations. The makeshift quantum transmitter dominated the view screen, an ugly but impressive fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology. Status report, she called out. Transmitter is online and stable, Rossi reported from his station. Power levels are holding. Void entities are in position, Sato added. They're ready to channel their awakening protocols through our array. Alina took a deep breath, keenly aware that this moment could change the course of galactic history. All right, people, this is it. No matter what happens next, I want you all to know that I'm proud of what we've accomplished here. We've shown that different species can work together, can overcome their fears and prejudices. Whatever comes next, remember this moment. She turned to Tanaka. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're doing what's necessary to protect not just Earth, but all sentient life in the galaxy. As Tanaka nodded and began composing the message, Alina gave the order they'd all been waiting for. Activate the transmitter. The ship hummed with power as the hybrid device came to life. On the view screen, they watched as waves of energy pulsed outward, rippling through space in ever-expanding circles. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly, the comm system exploded with activity. Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Reports of void swarms stopping in their tracks, of individual entities breaking away from the larger masses. It's working, Sato breathed, her eyes wide as she monitored the incoming data. The unawakened swarms, they're remembering. A new voice cut through the chatter, deep and resonant. It was the collective voice of the awakened void entities, speaking in unison. We remember. We were lost, consumed by hunger and fear. But now we see. We understand. Alina felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew their work was far from over. Open a channel to the swarm nearest Earth, she ordered. When the connection was established, Alina spoke clearly and confidently. This is Captain Alina Reyes of Earth. We've helped you remember who you are. We're not your enemies. We want to work with you, to help you rebuild what was lost. There was a moment of silence, then a response came. We understand. The hunger, it clouded our judgment. We will not attack. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Alina held up a hand for silence. Thank you, she said to the void entities. But now we need your help. The threat that destroyed your civilization, the Nameless, it's still out there. We need to prepare. As Elena began discussing plans with the awakened void swarms, a priority message came through from Earth. It was Admiral Chen, his face a mixture of confusion and awe. "Captain Reyes," he said, his usual stern demeanor softened by bewilderment. We're standing down our defenses. The void swarms have broken up. They're communicating with us." "What did you do?" Elena allowed herself a small smile. "We remembered who we are, Admiral. All of us. And in doing so, we may have just changed the course of galactic history." Chen shook his head, a wry smile creeping onto his face. "I don't know whether to court-martial you or recommend you for a medal, Reyes. But whatever happens next, I have a feeling we're going to need you out there." As the transmission ended, Elena turned back to her crew. The mood on the bridge was celebratory, but she could see the determination in their eyes. They all knew that this was just the beginning. "All right, people," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "We've averted one crisis, but we've got a bigger one looming. The Nameless are still out there, and sooner or later, they'll return. We need to be ready." She looked at each of her crew members in turn, seeing the same resolve reflected back at her. "We've proven that we can work together, that we can overcome our differences and achieve the impossible. Now we need to take that spirit and apply it on a galactic scale." Elena turned to the view screen, where representatives from dozens of species were waiting for guidance. Humans, Lumina, void entities, and countless others, all looking to her for leadership. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," she said, her voice steady and clear. "We need to build a coalition unlike anything this galaxy has ever seen. We need to combine our technologies, our strategies, our very ways of thinking. Because when the Nameless return, they won't be facing a fragmented, divided galaxy. They'll be facing all of us, united and ready." As her words rang out across the comm channels, Elena felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she'd ever experienced. They had taken the first steps into a larger universe, and though the path ahead was fraught with danger, she knew they wouldn't be walking it alone. The real challenge was just beginning, but for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy was united. And Elena Reyes, captain of the UES Horizon, was ready to lead them into the unknown. The Great Stand. 5 years had passed since the day humanity helped awaken the void entities and avert a galactic war. In that time, the face of the galaxy had changed dramatically. A coalition unlike any in recorded history had formed, with species that were once bitter enemies now working side by side. Captain Elena Reyes, now Admiral Reyes, stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon Aya, a ship that embodied this new era of cooperation. Its hull was a seamless blend of human, Lumina, and void technology, creating a vessel more powerful and adaptable than anything that had come before. "Status report," Elena called out, her eyes scanning the vast array of holographic displays surrounding her. Her XO, Commander Akira Tanaka, stepped forward. "The Sentinel network is online and stable, Admiral. We're receiving data from probes in every sector of the galaxy." Elena nodded, a grim smile on her face. The Sentinel network had been one of their first major projects, a vast web of advanced sensors designed to give early warning of any incursion by the Nameless. So far, it had been quiet, but they all knew it was only a matter of time. "And the evacuation drills?" she asked. "Proceeding as scheduled," Tanaka replied. "Most major population centers can now be evacuated to hardened shelters within hours." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the best they could do. The coalition had spent years preparing, building defenses, and developing new technologies. But the Nameless remained an enigma, a threat they could barely comprehend, let alone predict. Elena was about to request an update on their latest weapons tests when a shrill alarm cut through the air. Red lights flashed across the bridge as the ship's AI announced, "Priority alert. Anomaly detected in Sector 47 Alpha." On screen, Elena ordered, her heart racing. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a region of space near the galaxy's outer rim. At first, it looked normal, a field of stars against the velvet black of space. Then, almost imperceptibly, the stars began to wink out. Magnify. Elena breathed, though she already knew what they were seeing. The image zoomed in, and a collective gasp went up from the bridge crew. Where stars had been moments before, there was now nothing. Not darkness, not empty space, but a complete absence of everything. It was as if that section of the universe had simply ceased to exist. The nameless, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. After years of preparation, after countless drills and simulations, the moment they had all been dreading had finally arrived. She straightened, her voice ringing out clear and strong. Send the alert. All coalition forces to battle stations. Initiate evacuation protocols for all systems in the affected sectors. As her orders were relayed across the galaxy, Elena turned to her communications officer. Get me a channel to High Counselor Zixera and Mnemosyne. We need to coordinate our response. Within moments, the shimmering form of Zixera and the swirling, ever-shifting presence of Mnemosyne appeared on the view screen. You've seen it, Elena asked without preamble. Zixera's skin pulsed with patterns of deep red and purple, colors Elena had learned to associate with fear and determination. We have. Admiral, our fleets are mobilizing as we speak. Mnemosyne's voice resonated through the bridge, a chorus of countless individuals speaking as one. The memory of our fall burns bright once more. We will not allow history to repeat itself. Elena nodded grimly. We've prepared for this moment for years. Now it's time to put all our plans into action. She turned to her tactical officer. Bring up the strategic overlay. The three-dimensional map of the galaxy materialized in the center of the bridge. Thousands of points of light represented coalition ships and defensive installations. As they watched, entire sections of the map began to darken, representing the advance of the Nameless. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Tanaka observed, his voice tight with tension. Elena studied the map, her mind racing. Their simulations had always assumed they'd have more time to mount a defense. She made a quick decision. We need to slow them down. Mnemosyne, can your entities form a barrier? Buy us some time to get our main fleets in position. The void entities form swirled with increased intensity. It will be done, but we cannot hold them for long. As Mnemosyne's consciousness reached out to coordinate the void entities across the galaxy, Elena turned to Zixera. High Counselor, we need your people's phase shift technology. If we can't stop the Nameless advance, we need to be able to evacuate entire planets in minutes, not hours. Zixera's form shimmered with determination. Consider it done, Admiral. Our scientists are already adapting the technology for large-scale use. Over the next several hours, the Coalition's carefully laid plans were put to the test. Void entities swarmed to the front lines, forming a living barrier against the encroaching nothingness. Lumina ships darted between endangered worlds, their advanced phase shift drives allowing them to evacuate millions in the blink of an eye. And at the center of it all was humanity, coordinating the massive operation with a determination born from centuries of conflict and survival. Elena stood at the heart of the storm, issuing orders and making split-second decisions that would determine the fate of entire civilizations. She watched as coalition ships engaged the Nameless forces, weapons of unimaginable power clashing against an enemy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Admiral, Tanaka called out, his voice urgent. The void barrier in Sector 38 is collapsing. The Nameless are breaking through. Elena's mind raced, assessing their options. They couldn't afford to lose that sector. It would open a direct path to some of their most populated systems. Divert the 7th and 9th fleets to reinforce that position, she ordered. And get me a direct line to the void entities there. As the connection was established, Elena spoke quickly and clearly. This is Admiral Reyes. I know you're overwhelmed, but we need you to hold that line. Remember who you are. Remember what you're fighting for. The galaxy stands with you." There was a moment of silence. Then a chorus of voices responded. "We remember, Admiral. We will hold." Elena watched the tactical display, her heart in her throat, as the coalition ships raced to reinforce the failing barrier. For a moment, it seemed like they wouldn't make it. The darkness of the nameless advance crept forward, swallowing stars and planets in its wake. Then, just as all seemed lost, a brilliant light erupted at the edge of the conflict zone. Elena's eyes widened as she realized what she was seeing. "The void entities," Tanaka breathed. "They're sacrificing themselves, converting their entire mass into energy to hold back the nameless." The light grew brighter, pushing back the encroaching darkness. Coalition ships poured into the gap, their weapons blazing as they engaged the nameless forces. Elena felt a mix of awe and grief wash over her. The void entities had once been the scourge of the galaxy, mindless consumers driven by an insatiable hunger. Now they were giving their lives to protect the very civilizations they once sought to destroy. "Honor their sacrifice," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "Push the advantage. Drive the nameless back." The battle raged on, a cosmic dance of light and darkness that stretched across thousands of light years. Entire star systems became battlegrounds, the fabric of space-time itself warping under the strain of the titanic energies being unleashed. Hours turned into days, and still, the conflict showed no signs of abating. Elena found herself working in shifts with her fellow admirals, catching brief moments of rest when she could. The coalition's resources were stretching thin, but the nameless seemed endless, a void that could not be filled. It was during one of these rare moments of respite that Dr. Yuki Sato burst onto the bridge, her eyes wild with excitement. "Admiral," she called out, rushing to Elena's side. "I think we found something. A weakness in the nameless." Elena straightened, exhaustion forgotten. "Explain." Sato called up a series of complex equations and diagrams on the nearest display. "We've been analyzing the data from our engagements, trying to understand how the nameless operate, and we've discovered something incredible." She pointed to a particular set of numbers. "They're not erasing reality, Admiral. They're shifting it, moving sections of our universe into some kind of parallel dimension." Elena's mind raced with the implications. "So the areas they've erased are still there," Sato finished, "just out of phase with our reality. And if we can shift them, then maybe." "We can shift them back," Elena breathed. She turned to her communications officer. "Get me a line to every coalition ship and installation. Priority 1. As the channel opened, Elena's voice rang out across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Reyes. We've discovered a critical weakness in the nameless strategy. They're not destroying our worlds. They're displacing them, which means we can bring them back." She quickly outlined Sato's findings and the beginnings of a plan. "We need every ship equipped with phase shift technology to converge on the front lines. Void entities, we need you to use your quantum entanglement abilities to coordinate the shift. This is our chance to turn the tide." As the coalition forces rallied, Elena turned to Sato. "How sure are you about this?" The scientist met her gaze steadily. "Sure enough to bet the galaxy on it, Admiral." Elena nodded. "It would have to be enough. Then let's do this." The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Coalition ships maneuvered into position, their phase shift drives humming with power. Void entities spread themselves thin, creating a web of quantum entanglement that spanned the battlefield. "All ships in position," Tanaka reported. "Phase shift drives at maximum power." Elena took a deep breath, keenly aware that this moment would determine the fate of countless civilizations. "Initiate the shift." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly at first, but with gathering speed, pinpricks of light began to appear in the vast swaths of nothingness left by the nameless advance. Stars winked back into existence. Planets reappeared as if from nowhere. "It's working," Sato exclaimed, her eyes fixed on the readings flooding her console. "We're bringing them back." As more and more of the erased systems were restored, the nameless forces seemed to falter for the first time. Their advance slowed, then stopped altogether as they struggled to adapt to this unexpected development. Alina saw their opportunity. All ships pressed the attack. Drive them back while they're disoriented. The coalition fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. For the first time since the conflict began, the Nameless were on the defensive. As the battle raged on, Alina allowed herself a small moment of hope. They had found a way to fight back, to undo the damage the Nameless had wrought. It wasn't a final victory. Far from it, but it was a turning point. She looked out at the starfield, watching as planets and stars continued to reappear, like lights being switched on in a darkened room. Each one represented billions of lives saved, civilizations preserved. "We've done it," Tanaka said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "We've changed the course of the war." Alina nodded, her expression a mix of relief and determination. "We have. But this is just the beginning. The Nameless will adapt, find new strategies, and we need to be ready." She turned to face her crew, seeing the same mixture of exhaustion and resolve on their faces that she felt in her own heart. "What we've accomplished here today proves what I've always believed, that we are stronger together than we ever were apart. Human, Lumina, Void, and every other species in this coalition, we each bring something unique to this fight." Her voice grew stronger, carrying across the bridge and out to the countless ships and worlds linked to their transmission. "The Nameless thought they could erase us from existence, but they underestimated the power of our unity, the strength of our diversity. We are the galaxy's immune system, and together we will drag out this infection." As cheers erupted across the coalition channels, Alina allowed herself a small smile. The war was far from over, but for the first time, victory seemed possible. And whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them as one united galaxy. The great stand against the Nameless had only just begun, but already it had changed the course of history. And Alina Reyes, once a simple starship captain, now found herself at the center of a conflict that would determine the fate of all existence. Aftermath and new beginnings. The Galactic Datekeeper marked 5 years since the turning point in the war against the Nameless. Admiral Alina Reyes stood at the viewport of the UES Horizon Aya, her eyes tracing the familiar constellations of home. Earth hung in the void before her, a blue jewel wrapped in the protective embrace of the Coalition's most advanced defense systems. The ship shuddered slightly as it docked with Unity Station, a massive structure that served as the headquarters for the Galactic Coalition. Alina smiled softly, remembering a time when the idea of such cooperation between species would have seemed impossible. As she made her way through the station's corridors, beings of all shapes and sizes nodded respectfully or saluted. Humans walked alongside shimmering lumina, while void entities flowed through specially designed passages. Dozens of other species, some only recently joined to the coalition, added to the vibrant tapestry of galactic civilization. Alina entered the main council chamber, where representatives from every coalition member awaited. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed the current state of the galaxy. Large swaths of space glowed blue, indicating coalition control. Red areas marked regions still held by the Nameless, while contested zones flickered an uneasy purple. "Admiral on deck," someone called out, and the room snapped to attention. Alina waved them down. "At ease, everyone. Let's begin." High Counselor Zixera's melodious voice filled the chamber. "Admiral Reyes, the Coalition owes you a debt we can never fully repay. Your strategy has turned the tide of this war." Alina shook her head. "The credit belongs to all of us. Every being who stood against the darkness, every mind that contributed to our understanding of the enemy. We've come this far because we stood together." Mimosine, representing the void entities, spoke next. "Yet challenges remain. The Nameless adapt quickly. Our victories grow harder to achieve with each engagement." Alina nodded grimly. It was true. While they had made significant progress, pushing the Nameless back from the core worlds and reclaiming much of the galaxy, the enemy's resilience was frustrating. Every time the Coalition developed a new weapon or tactic, the Nameless would evolve a counter within days. Which is why, Alina said, her voice carrying across the chamber, I've called this meeting. We've been fighting a defensive war, reacting to the Nameless moves. It's time we took the initiative. She gestured, and the galactic map zoomed in on a particular sector. Our long-range scouts have detected unusual energy readings from this region. We believe it may be the source of the Nameless incursion into our galaxy. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Alina continued, her voice steady. I'm proposing a joint operation, a strike force comprised of our best ships and brightest minds to investigate this anomaly. If we can understand how the Nameless are entering our reality, we might find a way to stop them for good. The chamber erupted into a flurry of discussion. Some voices were supportive, others cautious. Alina let the debate flow, watching as species that were once bitter enemies now engaged in thoughtful discourse. Finally, Zixara spoke up. It's a bold plan, Admiral, but the risks are considerable. Alina finished. I know, but consider the alternative. We can't keep fighting this war forever. Sooner or later, our resources will run out, or the Nameless will develop a strategy we can't counter. This might be our best chance to end the conflict once and for all. Mimosine's form rippled with what Alina had learned to recognize as agreement. The void stands with you, Admiral. Our entities have long memories of the Nameless devastation. We will gladly risk everything to prevent history from repeating. One by one, the other representatives voiced their support. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Operation Luminous Dawn, as it came to be called, was greenlit. The next few months were a whirlwind of preparation. The UEA's Horizon Io underwent extensive modifications, integrating the latest advancements from across the Coalition. Void entities merged with the ship's systems, enhancing its ability to navigate the strange physics at the edge of known space. Lumina phase shift technology was upgraded, allowing for near-instantaneous tactical jumps. Alina hand-picked her crew, selecting the best and brightest from every Coalition species. Dr. Yuki Sato, whose insights had been crucial in turning the tide of the war, came aboard as Chief Science Officer. Commander Akira Tanaka, Alina's trusted XO for years, would once again serve at her side. On the day of launch, Unity Station was abuzz with activity. As Alina made her final inspections, she found herself face to face with Admiral Wai Chen, the man who had once ordered her court-martialed for disobeying orders. Admiral Chen, Alina said, snapping to attention. I didn't expect to see you here. Chen's stern features softened into a smile. At ease, Alina. I came to see you off, and to apologize. Alina blinked in surprise. Sir, 5 years ago, I was ready to throw you to the wolves for disobeying orders, Chen said, his voice gruff but sincere. I couldn't see past our immediate crisis to the bigger picture. You did. Your actions that day didn't just save Earth, they saved the galaxy. He extended his hand. Thank you. Alina shook his hand, feeling a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying lift from her shoulders. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. As she boarded the Horizon Io, Alina felt a familiar mix of anticipation and trepidation. They were about to venture into the unknown, facing an enemy that defied understanding. But as she looked at her crew, human, Lumina, Void, and a dozen other species working in perfect harmony, she knew they were ready for whatever lay ahead. All stations, report in. Alina called out as she took her place on the bridge. One by one, her officers confirmed their readiness. As the last check was completed, Alina took a deep breath. Helm, take us out. Engage quantum drive when ready. The Horizon II glided smoothly out of the docking bay. As they cleared Unity Station, the stars around them seemed to stretch and blur. There was a moment of disorientation, and then they were off, hurtling through space at speeds that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. Their journey took them to the very edge of the galaxy, where the starfield grew thin and unfamiliar patterns painted the void. As they approached their target coordinates, Alina felt a growing sense of unease. "Sado," she called out, "what are we looking at?" The scientist's fingers danced over her console. "It's hard to describe, Admiral. The readings don't make sense. It's as if space itself is folding." Before Alina could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as reality seemed to warp around them. "Report," Alina shouted, gripping her chair as the deck bucked beneath her feet. "We're caught in some kind of spatial distortion," Tanaka called back. "It's pulling us in." Alina's mind raced. This had to be it, the source of the nameless incursion. "All hands, brace for impact. Sado, gather every bit of data you can." The Horizon Aya was dragged into a swirling vortex of impossible geometries and mind-bending colors. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Alina felt as if her very atoms were being pulled apart and reassembled. Then, with a final lurch, they emerged into somewhere else. As the view screen cleared, Alina's breath caught in her throat. They were in a vast space that defied description. Structures of impossible scale floated in a void that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. And all around them, barely visible but undeniably present, were the nameless. "My God," Sato whispered, it's beautiful." And it was, in a terrifying, alien way. Alina shook off her awe, focusing on the task at hand. "Life support. Functioning," Tanaka reported. "But barely. Whatever this place is, it's not meant for us." Alina nodded grimly. "All right, people. We came here for answers. Let's get them." Over the next several hours, the crew of the Horizon Eye worked feverishly. Sado and her team analyzed the strange energies permeating this realm, while void entities reached out with their quantum senses, trying to understand the nameless. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The nameless weren't invaders in the traditional sense. They were the immune system of a higher dimensional reality, responding to what they perceived as an infection, the expansion of our universe into their realm. "So every time they erase part of our galaxy," Alina said, piecing it together, "they're actually just pushing it back, maintaining the boundary between our realities." Sato nodded excitedly. "Exactly. And I think I know how we can communicate with them." What followed was a desperate race against time. As the ship's systems struggled to cope with the alien environment, Sato and the void entities worked to create an interface that could bridge the gap between their modes of existence. Just as the Horizon Aya's hull began to buckle under the strain, a connection was established. There were no words, no images, just a pure exchange of concepts and intentions. Alina felt the weight of galaxies press upon her mind as she communicated humanity's story. The Coalition's struggle, their desire for peaceful coexistence. In return, she received flashes of understanding. The nameless purpose, their fear of the chaos that our reality represented to them. With Sato's help, Alina proposed a solution, a controlled expansion of our universe, maintained within strict boundaries. The nameless would no longer need to erase parts of our galaxy, and we would respect the limits of our growth. For a moment that seemed to last an eternity, there was no response. Then, slowly, Alina felt a sense of agreement. Not friendship, not alliance, but a mutual understanding. As alarms blared warning of imminent structural failure, Alina felt the ship being enveloped in energy. There was a sensation of movement, of vast distances being crossed in an instant. They emerged back in normal space with a flash of light. The familiar starfield of the Milky Way spread out before them. And all around, Coalition ships hung in space, weapons trained on the point of their return. "Stand down," Alina called out, her voice hoarse. Mission accomplished. In the days that followed, as the Coalition digested the information brought back by the Horizon Aya, a new era dawned for the galaxy. The war with the Nameless didn't end overnight. There were still battles to be fought, misunderstandings to be resolved. But for the first time, there was hope for true, lasting peace. Alina stood once again in the council chamber of Unity Station, but this time as an observer. A new generation of leaders was taking the reins, building on the foundation that she and her contemporaries had laid. As she watched humans, Lumina, void entities, and 100 other species working together to chart the course of galactic civilization, Alina felt a profound sense of pride and hope. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had confronted the unknown and found understanding. And in doing so, they had not just saved their galaxy. They had expanded the very definition of life and consciousness. Whatever challenges the future held, Alina knew that they would face them together. For in their darkest hour, when the call went out, it wasn't just the angry humans who had answered. It was every being who dreamed of a better tomorrow, every consciousness that valued life and growth and understanding. As she turned to leave, to let the next chapter of galactic history unfold without her, Alina smiled. The story of humanity's journey to the stars had been just the beginning. The true adventure, the exploration of what it meant to be sentient in a vast, wondrous, and ever-expanding universe, was only just beginning. And Alina Reyes, once a simple starship captain, now a legend whose name would echo through the ages, couldn't wait to see what came next.